Hi, everybody. I'm back, and I want to talk today about the big victory by the Republicans. And there's some things I want to talk about with respect to potential Republican policies that could potentially affect the stock market and the economy. Now, as you know, I've been pretty consistently bullish on the stock market and the economy for the past several years. I mean, the main number that I look at is the top line government spending. Everything flows off of that. And that top line government spending since 2009 has been over $4 trillion per year. And since 2009, the economy has been expanding. The stock market has been going up. We have not been below that threshold since 2009. But, you know, we've only gotten there as a result of some really bruising fights on the debt ceiling. You know, every time, there have been 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years where we've had these debt ceiling standoffs and, you know, threats not to raise the debt ceiling, but every time the debt ceiling was increased, and that was mainly due to the fact that Democrats still had control in the Senate. Eventually, you know, the Republicans took a lot of political heat from the electorate, and so they eventually always acquiesced on that. But ideologically, they're totally opposed to raising the debt ceiling. You know, just the other day in an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, John Boehner, House Majority Leader, and the presumptive Senate Majority Leader, now Mitch McConnell, they wrote this thing about what they're going to do to get America going. There wasn't a lot of detail in that op-ed piece, but the one little piece of detail they had in there was when they spoke about the debt, the national debt, this terrible, horrible burden, and our kids and our grandkids for generations. And of course, you know, they have that all wrong, because the national debt is, that's the national savings for the non-government, right? But they see it completely different. And the one thing they had in that op-ed piece was that they were going to go after the national debt and bring it down. So I will make this prediction right now. We will not see another debt ceiling increase from this Republican Congress. So that means for about at least the next 2 years, if not longer. I am going to go on record right now. We will not see another debt ceiling increase. So what does this mean? So, you know, they don't have to do anything about the debt ceiling until the end of March of next year, or mid-March of next year, and maybe, you know, they could run for a few months after that. But that is the time window, next March of 2015. Up until then, we're pretty much okay. But here's what happens. And by the way, Mitch McConnell has gone on record to say that they will not raise the debt ceiling. They will deal with the debt ceiling by various fiscal measures. In other words, that's a code for we're going to cut spending. That's how we're going to deal with the debt ceiling. Okay, so he said there's not going to be any defaults. There's not, you know, we're going to deal with it fiscally, and that means by cutting spending. So here's what happens. Come next March, okay, that's it. You've got the hard debt ceiling in place. That is not going up. So what does that mean? At that moment in time, that immediately, instantly puts the government on a balanced budget mode of operating. In other words, they can only spend now at the level of tax revenue. All right? So if we look at the deficit right now, which is about $500 billion roughly, that means the government spends $500 billion more than it takes in tax revenue. So what does this mean? As of March of next year, $500 billion of income that goes to the economy, to the private sector, right? Because when the government spends $500 billion more than it takes away from you in taxes, it's adding $500 billion net to your income and savings. And when I say your, I mean the non-government, the private sector, domestically, and the rest of the world. Okay, so in an instant, in one instant, in March of next year, when there's no more debt ceiling increase, that $500 billion of income and savings gets removed. So you're now, instead of operating on a $4 trillion in annual top line spending, you go right away immediately to $3.7 trillion for next year. You take away that $500 billion. You take $500 billion, that's, that's a pretty big chunk of income. You take that away, the economy starts to slow down, business sales start to slow down, people get fired, right? Unemployment goes up. And what happens? When the economy slows down, then government tax revenues go down. So all of a sudden now, when government tax revenues go down, well, guess what? They can't spend more than their tax revenues. If the tax revenues are falling, they have to cut spending even more. So now they cut spending even more. What happens? Same thing. Economy slows down. Business sales go down. Job losses go up. Unemployment goes up. All right? Tax revenues go down. And now you set in motion. You see what's happening now? They set in motion this vicious cycle where everything starts to go down. But here's the really scary part. People get laid off. Now, up until now, when people got laid off, there was a safety net, right? They were able to go file for unemployment insurance, and they had veterans benefits and Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, the so-called automatic stabilizers, all right? Government has to pay out these automatic stabilizers, but it can't. It can't go over the debt ceiling. So in order to meet the automatic stabilizers, if they're going to, in fact, even be able to make those payments, they got to cut even more. So the vicious circle accelerates down, and eventually what happens is, because you've suspended the automatic stabilizers, you throw the whole entire system into default. We come full-blown Europe, okay, where the only thing basically that gets saved are the banks because of the Fed. The Fed can extend credit to the banks just like it did in the financial crash, where all the homeowners, they let all of those people go down the tubes, right? But the banks got saved, and that's we're going to go, the whole system goes into default. And this time they're not going to, change it politically. They're not going to say, oh, we got to go back and raise the debt ceiling now, because A, they're completely ideologically opposed to that, and B, they don't understand. They see the debt as the problem, whereas the debt is the solution, because the debt is the money of the private sector. So they're taking it away. It's like literally you're draining out your blood. The patient is getting weaker and weaker. Condition is deteriorating. I've got to take out some more blood. It must still be in there. Take some more blood out, patient. Eventually, what happens to the patient? The patient dies. So, not to scare you, all right, but this is starting in March. So if the stock market, and this is going to be my first time I'm calling sort of a negative outlook on this. You got time, though, from now until March or midpoint of next year. The market rallies, start getting out. Start getting out. And by the way, this should not be very good for the dollar either, because the only salvation in all this, the only way to rescue ourselves is to increase our net exports, right? To kind of grow demand on the outside. And the only way that's going to happen is for the dollar to adjust. And the way that happens is that our producers, our manufacturers, our producers here, they're going to lower prices. That causes the dollar to go down. That's next year. Enjoy the dollar rally now. So they're going to screw it up. They're going to fuck it up royally, the Republicans. So by the way, I did not vote. I don't vote anymore. I don't think it makes any difference. I mean, I am not represented personally. The owners of the country, right? They're going to get what they want regardless of who is in office. So I did not vote. However, if you did vote Republican, you may end up having second thoughts about how you voted. And in other words, not being very happy about that vote that you cast, because the Republicans are going to screw up the economy royally. Royally. That's it for now, folks. This is Mike Norman saying see you next time. Bye-bye.